I left the United States of America 127 days ago, traveled to 6 countries. In that time, I'm now wrapping up my first region of the world, Mexico and Central America. Now, it was a blast. Now, it was also a blast on my wallet. Now, I'm looking back and I'm going to tell you all the money that I spent exactly in Mexico and Central America. Let's go. Now, I could tell you the exact number and call it a day. I spent $7,218.67 for 172 days of traveling. But without any context, you would not know where that money went to, what it went to, or anything. So in this video, I plan on showing you all the money that I spent in Latin America, doing a little mini review of my trip. Now, as a disclaimer, this is my budget and what I chose to spend my personal money on. No two travel trips are the same. What I spend is not what you spend. What you spend is not what I spend. What I spend is not what they spend. I met a lot of different travelers in my time, as y'all have probably seen if you paid attention to any of my videos. And the range of budget goes really wide. Some people spent $1,600 in 4 months, and some people spent $2,000 in 2 weeks. It all is really up to the person, but unlike them, I track every single penny I personally spent, which is why I thought I would post this video, because I thought it was very helpful. Because if you want to do the same thing that I kind of did, here's a little bit of inspiration and some more background. Now, I would say I would always watch these travel content creators have all this experience, and I was like, wow, that must cost a fortune. And turns out it does cost a fortune, but not as big as you think. The app I was tracking all my expenses was the Travel Spin. You can find it on the iOS store and the Apple store. It tracks every single cent that you can, and as well as category as well. You can put in the currency, you can put in whatever you want, and it actually tracks, however, the location, what time you did it, how you did it. It shows a daily average of everything via category. It's honestly one of the best travel apps, and I recommend it to all of my travel friends. With all of that out the way, let's jump into our first week, Mexico City, Mexico. It was my very first week of backpacking. I spent $532.55, which I thought was crazy high. Now, some of it was the flight into Mexico, drunken nights, and a lot of restaurants. Some highlights for me was going to the Pyramids of the Sun, dipping my toes in the backpack culture because I really never did this before, and it was just an interesting week overall. In Oaxaca, my very first day, I only spent $25.20, which is a very sharp contrast from my previous week's first day, which was $156.57. My second week, I spent a total of $381.94, and I had more fun than I did in the city. Just shows you that spending more money doesn't mean more fun. Some quick highlights in Oaxaca City was a huge food tour around the city. Great food. Hiking Héroe El Ottawa, it's a calcified waterfall, and a mezcal tour. Oaxaca City treated me well, and it also treated my pockets well. Going on to my third week in Mexico, it was in a mixture of cities. I was in Oaxaca, I was in San Jose de Pacifico, and Mazunte. Y'all saw videos about all of these cities. I spent a total of $329.15 that week. Transit was really high because I was city hopping. Food as well because I couldn't cook for myself. And transit in Mexico, I feel like, was a really bit pricey. But then again, it was the biggest country of all the countries that I did go to in this region. And the distances in the cities are very far. And I was crossing states too. So for ones that y'all don't know, Mexico has a lot of states. I was crossing borders. Highlights of this week was the nude beach. That was one of the most crazy experiences I've ever had by far. These past 3 weeks, I posted YouTube videos on. Y'all can go see them. Some of them are kind of crazy, right? It was a crazy time, but please check it out. Moving on to my fourth week in Mexico. I spent a total of $292.05. This week was a little bit different because this time my place of accommodation gave out free breakfast and dinner. It was the greatest hostel that I've been to yet. I was in San Cristobal de las Casas, which I believe saved me so much money. But what didn't save me money is the first time I got sick. Now, I didn't expect to get sick, especially so early on in my trip. But I got an eye infection, which made me spend a tad bit money on things that I wouldn't have, like medication, and as well as asking travelers to help me because I was bedridden. But I still enjoyed my week there. Went to some canyons, did some hikes, explored the lovely city of San Cristobal de las Casas, even went to a chicken sacrificing church. Y'all really didn't see much of that place, but it was a time. I was in Mexico for 4 more days after that, and I spent a total of $93.89, which comes out to a total of $1,629.58, with a daily average of $49.38 I would spend each day. I spent a total of 33 days in Mexico. Now looking back, I could have made much better choices with my money, spent way more time in Mexico, but what can you do? It is what it is. This is my very first time out the country for this extended amount of time, and I learned so much lessons about money. When I mean so much lessons, I could have spent so much more, and I could have spent so much less, and I really like seeing where my money was going to. I spent 33% of my money on accommodations, 13% on drinks, and another 13% on restaurants, and 12% on transportation, just to give you at a quick look. This is very much of a nerdy thing for me, but I love seeing numbers. I love seeing where my money is actually going to when I travel. Like when I mean 13% of my money is going towards partying and drinking, sheesh. When I saw that number, I was like, oh, I gotta slow down. I gotta change it up, because apparently I'm spending way too much on partying. Or 33% on accommodations, which is 1/3 on just sleeping. I feel like that's pretty right, but you let me know what your average or daily budget is when you go travel. Moving on to Guatemala. Guatemala was a tough place financially, because the general cost of everything was a little bit higher than it was in Mexico, which everybody told me in Guatemala it was cheaper, but I was like, that's not true. I also traveled a little bit less in Guatemala because for the reasons I will tell you later on. My first week I spent $444.19, which was less than my first week in Mexico, but higher than any other weeks that I had in Mexico. I was in Antigua, Guatemala the entire week. However, I did a lot of activities that week. Hiking the volcano, which I absolutely loved, one of my highlights of my trip so far. I partied with people that I didn't think I would party with, and then I partied with them, and I met them in other countries throughout my travels, which I thought was fun, and I got to just really enjoy a city. Absolutely loved it, but it was kind of on the pricier side. My second week in Guatemala was at Lake Atitlan. Most of it was in San Pedro. I spent $313.85. Now, I lost some money to exchange. I had way too much pesos. I should have used up the pesos before, but I lost almost $50 worth of value just transferring from Mexican pesos to Guatemalan quetzals. And that really hurt my pockets. But it's okay. I still counted it as an expense because I wanted it to reflect and just be a lesson for me, and then maybe a lesson for you. That's just, hey, you should really be making sure that you spend your money. But as well, at the lake, I did a lot of crazy stuff. I did cliff diving, explored the cities around it, went on a crazy boat party. Absolutely great time. My third and final week in Guatemala was a very tricky one. I enrolled into Spanish school because I wanted to learn it from a teacher. I was learning it self-taught by, apps on my phone like Duolingo and Rosetta Stone, but I wanted to really learn it from a teacher. So I spent $200 a week. And this was by far, sad to say, but my biggest waste of my money my whole entire trip. I didn't even make a video about it, but I wanted to, but I didn't want to slander the people. I felt like my teacher didn't care at all. I felt like it was just horrible. Like I would be in class and my teacher was on Tinder just swiping right on the foreign chicks. Are you serious? I don't know. I thought it was $200 was crazy. It was just too much. And it really left a spoiled taste in my mouth that the moment my classes ended, I just wanted to leave Guatemala. I spent a total of $329.60 my last week, which makes my grand total of Guatemala $1,087.64 with a daily average of $54.38. Way higher than Mexico, spent way less days, and there was so much I wanted to see in Guatemala, but I just didn't want to be in there anymore. I just felt like that was just tough. It was just very tough place. And I was like, this person doesn't care about me. My first rude guy ever. Anyways, I spent a total of 25% on accommodation, 18% on Spanish school, 12% on restaurants, and 11 days on sightseeing. I was in there for about 20 days and I wanted to just get out. However, moving on to one of the most favorite countries that I've ever been to in my whole entire life, El Salvador. A place where I would happily spend more time and more money if I ever had the chance to go back. I spent a little over a week there in El Salvador, only a total of 10 days total. And those 10 days were great nonstop fun. Spent about $394.16 in my whole time in El Salvador. My highlights of this week were every single day adventures. I felt like I would walk and trip into an adventure every single day. The road trip with the randoms, the volcanoes, going out partying with the locals in San Salvador. We fit 8 people in a literal Kia Soul. 8 people one time. It was insane. And for the first time in my travels, I felt like I was really actually traveling. For the very first time, my transportation was the highest amount that I spent, which was 27% of my money, followed by accommodations at 22%, then restaurants being 15%, groceries also being 14%. This made do because I split costs with a lot of separate people, especially during our road trip, like the cabins, the food. Some people would buy that, some people would buy that, and then we just averaged out. But my daily average was $39.42, which I thought for 10 days of fun was a great price. Next up is my most adventurous country by far, which was Nicaragua. At this point, I was a veteran traveler. You couldn't tell me nothing would faze me. I couldn't be surprised by much, but somehow, Nicaragua, I was surprised every single day. That place is just so unexpected. My first week in Nicaragua, I paid $403.48. My boat ride to the country was $63 of that alone, but it was also a very busy week. Volcano boarding, beach parties, treehouse raves, all money well spent. My second week in Nicaragua, I spent it in 2 separate islands, Ometepe Island and the Corn Islands, both places where I felt like anything could happen. I was traveling with Farhan for the most of it, posted a lot of videos during that time on Ometepe Island, just random adventures every day, renting motorcycles, and the Corn Island was just simply relax. I spent a total of $316.60 this week. Most of it was on motorbikes in Ometepe Island and just overall transportation, going from island to island. It was the funnest week and I felt like I wasted no money that week. My third week in Nicaragua was spent solely in the Corn Islands, where I felt slowly in love with the ocean until it decided to kill me. But that's neither here nor there. That's a video for another day. I spent a total of $149.18 on the island. My cheapest week ever to this point up in traveling, and the most different place that I've been to on earth. The power would cut out from 6 a.m. to 1 p.m. daily. Sometimes it would run out of water, run out of food, and it was a different place of traveling. I felt like the compromises that you get to see some people live was just insane. Like if you didn't charge your phone and your devices properly, you're just out of luck till the next day. It was insane. But at the same time, it was really good to to be disconnected, to have no Wi-Fi, no power, and you're either talking to people or you're reading and working and just relaxing. I was in Nicaragua for another 4 days after that, and I spent $93.89. This was on the days where I slept on a boat filled with trash, just escaping a raging hurricane. Also, one of the most traveled days and worst travel days of my life was in that week. I spent a total of 25 days in Nicaragua and spent a total of $965.73, with my lowest daily average so far being $38.63. Nicaragua was just a fun place. Up next, country-wise, is Costa Rica, the most expensive country that I really didn't feel like it was really expensive because I volunteered. Now, I briefly glanced over volunteering in my other videos, but it's where I worked for a certain amount of hours a day, and I get in exchange free housing and some free food. My first week in the country, I spent $472.79. It was the second highest week of my first week in the country. I also did a lot. I was in Liberia, Monteverde, La Fortuna, Costa Rica, and these 3 separate cities, and I did a lot of activities in each. My highlight there was absolutely sneaking into the hot springs. I was with a good group of people. We sneak in and it was just insane. Another highlight off the top of my head was going on my first real day of the trip with this beautiful girl. We sat down, we had dinner, we exchanged, we left walking, absolutely gorgeous. And then again, I also hiked the Cloud Forest that week. These adventures are just so back to back that it's really hard to pick a highlight, and it's really hard to sit here and say, oh, that was an expensive week. But when you look at what you did, you absolutely love it. My second week was a little bit wild because that's when I started volunteering. I spent only a total of $247.31, and most of it was just due on groceries and volunteering and cooking, which saved me so much money. I was able to stay at a place and I really enjoyed, so I really loved staying there, and I got to spend it with a great host. It's this Costa Rican lady and her family. I got to sit there, help her out with a couple things, and in that time I got to learn so much about the culture, meet so many great people, and which I would never have gotten the chance to meet if I wouldn't have stayed there for 3 weeks. Absolutely lovely. My third week in Costa Rica, I was still volunteering and spent the second to least amount of money in a week by far, which was $156.78. Shout out to volunteering, man. Nothing really happened that week besides going on the longest zip line in Latin America, which was Extremo Park. Now, it was the most touristic thing that I could ever do, but it was absolutely fun. Also, this week was the first week I spent $0 a day on anything. I spent nothing. I didn't have to pull out my card, pull out cash on my wallet, swipe it, nothing, $0. And boy, did that day feel good. My fourth week in Costa Rica and part of my last week volunteering was the cheapest week so far. I only spent $73.84. I could never in my life imagine traveling to a foreign country and spending less than a Benjamin in 1 week. Absolutely crazy. But once again, shout out to volunteering and shout out for cooking and shout out to my host in Costa Rica. She really hooked it up for me. Absolutely loved her. And if I ever get the chance to go back to Costa Rica, I'm buying her a drink for sure. Now, the cheat code in when you want to really save money is cooking yourself. Now, you may think, well, why don't you just eat the food of the country? Yes, I understand that, and you do. You really do. But if I eat out every day, for one, I'm going to get tired of eating out every day, and then I'm going to want something different that the city may not have. And cooking every time comes in clutch. But I do reserve a tad bit of my budget to go out to eat at restaurants, because I feel like when you travel, you really have to eat some of the cuisine of that place. My fifth and last week in Costa Rica, I spent a total of $190.80. I was in 3 different cities: Monteverde, San Jose, and Puerto Viejo. Most of the cost was to just get out the country. I felt like I did there. I did everything that I wanted to do in the country. I came there for one reason, and that was only to hike the cloud forests. And when I did that, I was like, what's the point of being here? I was in Costa Rica for 36 days. I spent $1,131.52 with a daily average of $31.43. And whew, it was a time in Costa Rica. But last but not least, the most southern point of Central America was Panama, and Panama was a place. Panama has the strongest economy in all of Central America. Part of that is really due to the canal, and it really shows in the people, and it really showed up in my wallet. This is my first country where I was actually quote-unquote paid money. More on that later, I'll touch that. But also, it's where I spent the most time in the country. My first week, I spent $356.47. Now, this is because one reason only, and I touched on this, and I didn't even make a video on it. It was Filthy Friday, and boy, did I get filthy. Filthy Friday is a huge party where I spent $171.59 in just one day. And out of that, $147 was just pure on drinking and having fun and drink-related activities. Now, I ain't gonna lie to y'all, I was wildin'. I ain't gonna lie, I was wildin', but then quickly found another balling opportunity because I realized I almost spent $200 a day just partying, and I was like, oh, this cannot happen. This cannot happen. My second week in Panama was really reasonable at $171.01. Now, $126.67 was that on groceries for the entire month I was planning on staying in Santa Catalina, Panama, volunteering. This will reflect in the up-and-coming weeks that I was there, but for the very first time that I got paid, I thought it was crazy. Now, I didn't really get paid, if the taxman looking at me, I did not get paid at all, right? But I exchanged my time for breakfast and accommodation. And every time I worked longer than 4 hours, I would just find $10. Something small, something fine. And that $10 helps out a lot. You may think, oh, $10 a day doesn't really matter, blah, blah, blah. But when I say that $10 you can make last when you're volunteering, you can make it last. I think I spent $10. Like all the money that I made, I think I spent it on just like transportation, and I think that was probably the best way to do it. It was insane. I had 3 separate days of not spending any money, absolutely zero. Three separate days spending zero money. You can't beat it. You actually cannot beat it. My third week in Panama was once again another record-breaking week for me because I only spent $46.74. Absolutely insane. I would have never thought I could travel for a whole week for less than $50. That's a grant bill. That's a U.S. grant bill, $50. And like I said, the shopping trip that I did for groceries in my first week of volunteering helped me a lot because I didn't spend no money a couple days. I also did the Coiba Islands, which was about $40. Normally it's really like $80, but I was with a bunch of locals and we had a great time and it was money well spent. Now my fourth week, I beat the least amount of record by $13.01. Yeah, you heard me right. I only spent $33.73 in my fourth week traveling in Panama. So much money saved. It was crazy. And this was by far the funnest time I had while volunteering. Skinny dipping, y'all never saw that, but I did it. Oh shit. Crazy. Hitchhiking, like catching hitchhikes from the beach parties back to my place. Y'all never saw that, but I did it.
No, my voice is better. Oh, that's why.
And I got to meet the most amazing people that week, and it was actually crazy. And once again, I had a couple days where I spent $0. It was insane. It was a crazy week, and I absolutely love it. My fifth week in Panama was my final week volunteering in the country. And then I backpacked my way around. I finally went to Boquete. I climbed a volcano there. And this is where I was done with traveling, and I told myself, I don't want to cook another meal at all, which maybe it was a bad decision because I started to swipe my card at restaurants. I spent $139.17 that week, and that week was hard on me because I really felt a strong connection with Santa Catalina, Panama. I felt like it was my home base, and I still feel like I could really go back there, and they would welcome me with open arms. The locals, the people that I worked with, it was great. And I would never spend $0 a day ever again my time in Central America. My sixth week in Panama, I spent a total of $240.15. I went to a lot of different cities: Boquete, David, El Valle de Antone. I hiked volcanoes, slept on volcanoes, and hiked some more. I was hiking. I found a really hiking group, and they really showed me the joys of hiking, that I might be a hiker, man. I don't know. Maybe. From there, my seventh week of Panama was expensive. Like I said before, I didn't want to cook anymore. I just wanted to swipe my cards. And I also bought some new shoes. And they were expensive.
These shoes were $203. $203. I don't think y'all heard me right. I don't think y'all heard me correctly. $203.
Yeah, they were that expensive, and I feel bad for it because I feel like I could have bought some lower price shoes if I would have waited, especially if I would have bought shoes in my next country. But whatever, and I really didn't feel like putting them in the tracker because I felt like it's unfair to Panama that I spent $200 on shoes that I didn't do it in any other country. But what can you do? And that leads us into the last week in Panama, which was $439.96. Another expensive week, but this because I was going on dates. And now every time a woman is involved, it's gonna be just a lot of money. But I had so much fun. I went go-karting. I went to clubs that I wouldn't even known about. It was just absolutely insane. And the women were lovely and great. But all those weeks in these countries and all these days comes out to, like I said, a total of $7,218.67. With the daily average, I would spend roughly around $42.97. Now, it does seem like a lot of money. While you spend about a little bit less than $50 a day traveling, and yes, $50 a day traveling is what I did, and I was gone on the road for a long time. Like I said, I got to see people, experience cultures that I would never get to experience in my life if I didn't make this trip. And I really think I made the right decision by leaving, guys. I truly do. I felt like, yeah, I'm just burning money, but from what you experience by it is worth its weight in gold. I'm thinking I could have made this number even smaller, maybe 6,000, 5,000, if I was just a little bit smarter on how I did stuff, research how to plan, and I didn't put myself in a lot of situations by buying new shoes, going on dates, and all this stuff. I think I really could have spent like 6,000-ish bucks total if I just really would have just been smarter. But as y'all see, that's not how I travel. Now, for the past 172 days is absolutely crazy. It was just, I don't know how to tell you guys. The life that I lived was just insane. And I feel like I grew up a lot. I feel like literally going through all of these experiences, going to all these countries, getting myself in these situations has really changed me. And I feel like that's just stuff that money can't buy. Money can't buy it. Now, like I said, I'm wrapping up my first region of the world. I did skip a couple countries. I skipped Belize and I skipped Honduras. I just couldn't find a route to get there. When I was in Guatemala, I was planning on going up to Belize, but I wanted to leave. And when I was in El Salvador, I wanted to go to Honduras next, but I wanted to meet a couple friends in Nicaragua. So I skipped those two countries, which I'm very unfortunate about, but I'll be there again. Hopefully, maybe someday. It was one of the greatest times of my life, and I cannot wait for the next 127 days, the next 6 months, the next year, and just see where I'm at country-wise, and just see how my mental state is, whatever. Now, this is one of your first videos watching mine. Welcome. I'm a guy who just is living life out here, and I hope to see you again. So thank you guys for watching. I will show you my next country in my next videos because it's going kind of crazy. As if you can see, I'm staying in a place where I never stayed at before, so it is kind of insane. Happy travels.